Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a B-movie review. I'll be having a look at the movie Age of Dragons. So this is actually a retelling of the Moby Dick story. So it is sort of set in a sort of nondescript sort of fantasy, sort of fantasy land. You've basically got the story is from this the character Ishmael's sort of perspective. It's his kind of like narrating it as we sort of go through. And he's this sort of young and enthusiastic but inexperienced sort of wannabe dragon hunter with his kind of his native sort of companion who's meant to be like this sort of like almost a bit like a Native American, I guess. But he sort of joins this sort of party of dragon hunters under the famous dragon hunter Captain Ahab, and there he meets the crew along with his sexy adopted daughter, and sort of goes on this quest. And they hunt dragons for a kind of liquid that's in their throats called vitriol, something like that. And basically, they say in the film that it's basically used to sort of put in lamps and things like that. Basically, so it's almost a bit like sort of paraffin or something along the lines of that. Some sort of oil. It's sort of used for multiple different purposes, and that's ultimately why people hunt dragons. But obviously, Ahab has had an experience with a great white dragon who we told in a sort of prologue that is responsible for his sort of sister's death when he was at a young age, and he's had this obsession, much like obviously Moby Dick. For ages, for his whole life basically, to try and hunt this dragon down. So he kind of gets this this sort of team of dragon hunters, including Vinnie Jones' character, who I have to say is probably no more than an extended cameo in this film. And they sort of go off to hunt to hunt dragons, but all Ahab wants to do is actually hunt this white dragon. You've got. They kind of end up. They find one of the sort of key moments, I guess, is they sort of find this nest of sort of young, smaller dragons, and they end up slaughtering all of them when they're sleeping. But then Ahab sort of sees that the white sort of dragon at distance and decides just to not even bother with all these ones they just slaughtered, and sort of leave them with this guard for this white dragon, which ultimately causes sort of the kind of friction within the group ultimately. So you've got all the final confrontation with the dragon and stuff like that, and that's kind of the plot really. So this is obviously a lower budget movie. Now, as I always do with low budget movies, I cannot judge them in the same sort of critique that you would look at a higher budget film from. But I have to say the effects were actually fairly good on this one. I think the dragon effects obviously pretty much all CGI, apart from the odd sort of practical model in the sort of in close-ups and stuff. But generally speaking, I have to say I was fairly impressed with the special effects. They're pretty damn decent. The dragon designs I thought were kind of quite nice. We see a couple of different dragons. We see obviously the great white dragon, but there's also a sort of another dragon that they fight during the course of the film, and they're sort of like these wervins or something they call them, and they're sort of like basically smaller, almost like eagle sort of sized sort of dragons, and these are the ones they slaughter. So the effects are pretty good. It's got this kind of fantasy setting with it. It's almost a little bit steampunk, is what I have to say. Now, one of the things, if I'm critiquing this film, in staying on this steampunk theme, they have this ship in it, and it's sort of based on obviously Moby Dick. It's obviously based in the sea. So instead of this one, they have kind of this like land barge thing, but there's no. I don't understand how it's actually moving because it's not horse drawn. There's no sails in it, and they said from the beginning that the vitriol they use is used for things like sort of to light lamps and to sort of grease cogs and things like that. So I don't understand what's actually. It's basically a lorry, and it's it's about that sort of size, but when you have the interior shots, it's kind of a lot bigger as well. So there's a fair amount of sort of internal logic issues in this film. Now it's Danny Glover actually plays Ahab, and I've got to say him probably along with a few other cast are very, very overacting here. They obviously just know it's kind of a, you know, sci-fi sort of B movie, and they're kind of just doing the most cheesy kind of over the top acting that you would expect to see in something like that, which is a shame because, you know, I actually think the effects are fairly good in this film, and it's a shame that the sort of the some of the performances couldn't have been reined in a little bit. I don't think the script helps, particularly some of the lines of dialogue are pretty dire, I have to say. And its biggest sin of this, though, is it's fairly boring film. It's just not very. There's not a lot of action in it, and the action and the sort of like the kind of the battles between the dragons and stuff, they're not all that interesting, unfortunately. Which is a you know, a real shame, because it's, you know, the money's obviously gone on the effects, and it looks quite nice, and some of the sort of the cinematography is not too bad. I feel like this, and it kind of, you know, it has some sort of nice camera work in there, but unfortunately, the story wise, I actually think they should have maybe, if they wanted to base it on Moby Dick, that's fine, but I think they maybe should have branched off a little bit more and kind of tried to just do, you know, a little bit more of their own thing whilst keeping the sort of the sort of theme. They've changed obviously it from a whale to a dragon and put it in a different, you know, setting and everything, but I actually think that they could have changed a little bit more of the actual stories. And I actually think they probably shouldn't have called him Ahab either. I think it's probably a little bit obvious what they were doing. You know, you kind of know what you're going to, you understand what the story is going to be, obviously, going into it. So, you know, nice to look at really, but not a particularly interesting film to watch overall. So I'm going to give this one a 4.5 out of 10. And that's really for just the effects and the kind of the look of the film, but for an actual story, not all that fantastic, I have to say. Anyway, leave me a comment and I look forward to seeing you next time. See you later.